The great hall of the Aurelian court was designed to impress and intimidate at the same time. Its ceiling rose so high that the lights embedded within it looked like distant stars. Pillars of pale crystal lined the chamber, each etched with symbols of ancient victories, treaties, and bloodlines that had ruled the empire for thousands of cycles. Everything in the hall spoke of tradition, control, and certainty. Princess Sarilith stood at the center of it all, calm and straight-backed, her hands folded neatly in front of her. Her silver-blue eyes moved slowly across the assembled council members, nobles, and advisors. They were waiting for one word from her, a single word that had already been decided long before she was born. Yes. No. Some stared at Sarilith as if she had suddenly changed species in front of them. The Supreme Regent, an elder whose lifespan was nearing its end, narrowed his eyes. "Princess," he said carefully, "you are aware that this union has been planned since before your maturation cycle. And you understand the consequences of refusal." Sarilith had studied those systems all her life. She knew where they were strong. She also knew where they were fragile. "I am not rejecting unity," she continued. "I am requesting time and perspective. Humanity." "I request permission to conduct a cultural observation," Sarilith said. "A brief one, to study humanity directly, not through reports. If after that I still see no value in my refusal, I will reconsider." They were neutral, fragmented, and far from imperial borders. "Very well," he said at last. "You will be accompanied, and this delay will not exceed one standard cycle." Half the equipment was older than Elias himself, patched together with newer parts and handwritten notes. The machine did not care. "Test unsuccessful," it replied in a calm, neutral tone. Elias sighed and leaned back in his chair. He ran a hand through his hair and stared at the ceiling. It leaked sometimes when the station's temperature regulators acted up. Someone had taped a plastic sheet over the worst of it. It worked well enough. He smiled faintly. Good enough was usually good enough for humans. A soft chime interrupted his thoughts. A message icon appeared on his screen, marked with a priority level he had never seen before. He frowned and opened it. "Elias Rowan," the message began. "You have been selected for diplomatic escort duty." He stared at the screen in silence, then he laughed. "You've got to be kidding me." The coffee mug with a crack down the side. "Yeah," he muttered, "this will go great." As she stepped onto the platform, her escort detail paused. Sarilith waved them back. "I will proceed with the human representative alone," she said. Protocol advised against it. She knew that, but protocol had also advised her to say yes. A single human waited near the docking controls. He was taller than average for his species, with tired eyes and an expression that hovered somewhere between curiosity and disbelief. "That's you?" he asked. Sarilith inclined her head slightly. "I am Princess Sarilith of the Aurelian Empire." He simply gestured toward the corridor leading into the station. She followed. As they walked, Sarilith observed everything. The narrow halls, the exposed wiring. The handwritten signs warning about faulty gravity near junctions. See humans moved past them, nodding politely, sometimes smiling. None of them stared, none of them showed fear. "Do they know who you are?" Sarilith asked. Elias shrugged. "Not really. Some probably do, most don't care." Humans sat together, talking, laughing, working on devices that clearly did not belong together but somehow functioned anyway. Sarilith felt something unfamiliar, not danger, not superiority, discomfort. "How does your species maintain order?" she asked. Elias considered the question. "We don't, not perfectly anyway." "Depends on your point of view." "You survive without certainty," she said quietly. Elias nodded. "We plan like things will go wrong because they usually do." For the first time since entering the hall of her own empire, Sarilith felt something shift inside her. Not rebellion, curiosity, and that, she suspected, might be far more dangerous to the old order than a simple refusal ever could be. The next day on the human station began without ceremony, alarms, or formal schedules. Princess Sarilith noticed this immediately. In her empire, every movement of someone important followed a precise structure. Here, the lights simply brightened when people woke up. Doors opened when needed. The station hummed like a living thing that trusted its inhabitants to know what to do. Sarilith stood near the small living space assigned to her. It was clean but simple, with plain walls and a narrow window looking into space. There were no symbols of rank, no guards posted outside. At first, this felt like an oversight. Then it began to feel like something else entirely. Elias arrived late. Not because he was careless, but because he had been helping someone fix a water recycler that had decided to stop working without warning. When he finally reached her door, he paused, straightened his jacket, and knocked. "Sorry," he said when she opened it. "Things broke." They walked through the station together, moving deeper into areas not designed for visitors. Sarilith observed everything. Humans worked in groups that shifted constantly. Authority seemed flexible. One moment a person led, the next they followed, depending on who understood the problem better. In one room, a group of engineers argued openly with a supervisor. Their voices were calm but firm. Data screens floated between them, filled with equations and models that were clearly unfinished. "They disagree with their superior," Sarilith noted. Elias smiled slightly. "That means it's working." It was smaller than Imperial libraries, but dense with information. Digital records, physical books, old storage drives, and handwritten notes filled the space. "This is human history," Elias said, "or part of it. Wars, migrations, collapses, recoveries. Empires rose and fell quickly by galactic standards. Plagues wiped out millions. Climate disasters reshaped continents. Again and again, humanity faced extinction-level events, yet the timeline did not end." "You should not exist," Sarilith said quietly. Elias did not take offense. He had heard similar statements before. "Statistically," he said, "probably not." Still, humans kept returning to space. "Why persist?" she asked. Elias shrugged. "Because stopping felt worse than failing." A child noticed Sarilith and waved. "Are you from far away?" the child asked. "Yes," Sarilith replied. "Cool," the child said, then returned to building something that immediately collapsed. Sarilith watched as the child laughed and tried again. "They are not corrected," she observed. "They are," Elias said, "just not stopped." Later, Sarilith requested access to human predictive systems. This surprised Elias, but he arranged it. They entered a simulation lab where analysts worked with probability models and future projections. A human analyst explained the system. "These models assume things will go wrong," she said. "Then we see how bad it gets and what might help." They were crude compared to Imperial standards, yet flexible. "What is your margin for error?" Sarilith asked. The analyst smiled. "Big." Projected collapse, she adjusted variables. Human cooperation increased slightly. Recovery. She introduced a new disaster, adaptation. She ran the simulation again and again. Every time humans failed, the model did not end. It bent, changed, created new paths. Her own Imperial models did not do this. They aimed for stability, not survival through chaos. "This system is inefficient," Sarilith said. "Yeah," Elias replied, "but it doesn't break when things get messy." Instead, they spread outward not as conquerors but as problem solvers. She found that disturbing, not because it threatened her empire directly, but because it challenged the foundation of Imperial logic. The empire believed control created strength. Humans suggested something else entirely. The next day, news arrived from the Aurelian court. Pressure was increasing. Advisors questioned the value of her delay. Noble houses expressed concern. The marriage candidate had issued a formal statement of patience, thinly veiled with expectation. Sarilith closed the message without responding. Instead, she requested to see Earth. The journey took time. During transit, Elias explained Earth's environmental history. How humans damaged it, argued about it, nearly lost it, and then slowly worked to repair parts of it. "We're still fixing things," he said. "You broke your home," Sarilith stated. "Yes," Elias replied, "and we're still here." The planet bore scars, but also signs of healing. Humans moved freely. No one bowed, no one stared. As they walked through a public space, Sarilith noticed a memorial. Names were carved into stone. Dates marked losses from a disaster decades earlier. "Why preserve this?" she asked. "So we remember what failure costs," Elias said, "and why trying again matters." That evening, she accessed her empire's marriage projections again. The Union promised stability, predictability, continuity. But now she saw another variable, humanity, not as a political asset, not as a military ally, as an idea, a species that refused to accept final outcomes. That planned for things to break and kept moving anyway. She sent a short message back to the court. Her evaluation was incomplete. The Empire would have to wait. As she looked out over Earth's night side, lights scattered across the surface like constellations, Sarilith realized something unsettling. Humans did not survive because the universe favored them. They survived because they did not expect it to. And that realization was beginning to change everything. Princess Seralith spent the first hours of the third day in silence. She sat in a quiet observation room above Earth's atmosphere, watching the planet rotate slowly beneath her. Elias had offered to explain more, to guide her through additional data or locations, but she had asked to be alone. This was not refusal, it was processing. Her personal device floated in front of her, filled with human data. Population graphs, economic cycles, climate recovery plans, political arguments recorded and archived for anyone to see. The amount of disagreement alone was staggering. Entire systems built to allow people to openly oppose one another without the structure collapsing. In the Aurelian Empire, disagreement was treated like corrosion. Here, it was treated like fuel. Seralith activated her own imperial predictive system. It was far more advanced than the human one, powered by generations of refined algorithms. It had guided imperial decisions for centuries. It was trusted because it was accurate. She input human variables. The system processed the data and displayed a familiar result: collapse. She adjusted for cooperation between human factions, delayed collapse. She added technological growth, temporary stabilization followed by collapse. Seralith frowned. The model assumed efficiency, order, and hierarchy as requirements for survival. Humanity violated all three. She overlaid the human simulation model Elias had shown her earlier. The two systems clashed immediately. Where the imperial model demanded clarity, the human one accepted uncertainty. Where the imperial system ended when thresholds were crossed, the human system branched. Her device chimed softly. Incompatible modeling logic detected. Incompatible does not mean incorrect, she said quietly. She began altering the imperial model itself, small changes at first, allowing for redundancy, allowing leadership to shift, allowing failure without total loss. The model resisted. Projected outcomes became unstable. Results contradicted one another. The system struggled to define success. Seralith felt something close to unease. This model had guided her people for generations, and yet it could not understand humans at all. Later that day, she met Elias in a public transport hub on Earth. Humans moved around them, busy and unconcerned. Some carried tools, others carried food, some argued loudly while still walking in the same direction. "You look like you didn't sleep," Elias said. "I did not," Seralith replied. "I was thinking." Millions had been displaced. The disaster had been recorded, analyzed, and argued over endlessly. Now the city stood again, not the same as before, different materials, different layouts, systems designed to bend instead of resist. Seralith spoke to planners, engineers, and citizens. None claimed perfection, many admitted mistakes. Some openly criticized their own leaders. "Why trust a system that failed you?" Seralith asked one woman. The woman smiled tiredly. "Because we fixed it together." Humans argued often, but when real problems appeared, they aligned quickly. Differences were set aside without formal command. "Your people change priorities very fast," Seralith said to Elias. "Yeah," he replied. "We're bad at long-term agreement, pretty good at short-term survival." The marriage candidate had arrived at the capital. Preparations continued. Delays were becoming unacceptable. Seralith closed the message and did not respond. Instead, she requested something unusual. "I want to run a joint simulation," she told Elias. "Imperial data and human logic." "That is not a reason." Human analysts argued openly with Seralith's assumptions. She corrected them. They corrected her back. At one point, the simulation froze entirely. "Well," one analyst said, "that's new. Try survival instead." Not excitement, recognition. The Empire had built itself on avoiding chaos. Humanity had learned to live inside it. Later, alone again, Seralith reviewed recordings of the session. She replayed Elias' words, "Try survival instead." Her entire life success had been defined for her. A stable empire, a secure lineage, a marriage that ensured continuity. But what if stability was not the highest goal? She accessed imperial historical records, carefully, privately. She searched for suppressed data, small collapses, near misses, systems that had almost failed but were corrected just in time. She noticed a pattern. Every major crisis had been solved by deviation from the model. Exceptions, improvisation, individuals who acted without permission. Those individuals were celebrated later, but the system itself never changed. Seralith leaned back and closed her eyes. The Empire did not learn. Humans did. The next morning, she joined Elias for a simple meal. The food was plain, shared at a common table. Other humans sat nearby, discussing unrelated things. "Do you ever get tired of fixing things that break?" Seralith asked. All the time, Elia said, but not fixing them feels worse. They had shown her a future her empire could not predict. Later that day, she sent a message to the Aurelian court. This time it was longer. She explained her findings, not emotionally, logically. She described human resilience, adaptive systems, and survival-based modeling. She stated clearly that her evaluation had revealed a flaw in imperial doctrine. She did not ask permission. She informed them that the marriage decision would be delayed indefinitely. The response was immediate: shock, protest, formal objections. Sarilith read them all calmly. As she stood once more at the observation window, Earth below her, she felt a quiet certainty. Humans were not powerful because they controlled their future. They were powerful because they accepted they never would. And for the first time, Sarilith wondered what her empire might become if it stopped pretending otherwise. The message from the Aurelian court did not stop after Sarilith sent her report. It multiplied. Formal objections turned into carefully worded warnings. Warnings turned into concerns for imperial stability. Concerns turned into quiet reminders of duty, lineage, and consequence. Each message was polite. Each carried weight. Sarilith read them all. She did not answer. Instead, she continued observing humans. On Earth, life did not pause because someone important was thinking. Cities kept moving. People argued, repaired, failed, tried again. Systems broke in small ways every day, and no one panicked. They complained, adjusted, and continued. Sarilith walked through a research center where humans worked on long-term space habitats. The project had been redesigned 7 times. Funding had been cut twice. Leadership had changed more than once, yet the work continued. "Why not wait for full approval?" Sarilith asked one of the researchers. The researcher smiled. "Because waiting doesn't build anything." Later, Elias brought her to a public forum. Humans gathered there to discuss a controversial planetary policy. Voices were raised, opinions clashed, some walked away angry. Sarilith watched closely. No one was arrested, no one was silenced. The system absorbed the conflict. "How does this not fracture you?" she asked Elias. "It does," he said. "Sometimes. Then we put it back together differently." No unified doctrine, constant disagreement, and yet alive. The next message from the court arrived with an imperial seal. Mandatory return requested, not an order, not yet. Sarilith closed the message slowly. The choice was approaching. The empire expected compliance. Tradition demanded it. Stability depended on it. But now Sarilith understood something she had not before. The empire did not fear chaos. It feared losing control. She requested a final meeting with Elias before returning to the capital. They met near the edge of a quiet park. Earth's sky was clear, stars faint but visible. Humans walked past, unaware of the decision forming nearby. "They want you back," Elias said. "Yes," Sarilith replied. "And the marriage. They expect acceptance. We built rigid systems. They failed hard. Or it will reveal its weakness." The Supreme Regent watched her closely. "Princess Sarilith," he said, "you have completed your evaluation." "And yet," she said, raising her voice slightly, "they survive." "It ensures predictability," Sarilith replied, "not resilience." "Princess, this decision risks everything." "You would replace tradition with chaos," one noble accused. "No," Sarilith replied, "I would replace control with trust." "The marriage is suspended," he said. Shock rippled through the hall. "An imperial review will be conducted." "Welcome to the club." That more than anything else unsettled the court. Noble houses waited for signs of collapse. Advisors watched trade routes, alliances, and internal systems, expecting cracks to form. The predictive models were run again and again, each time producing warnings marked with unfamiliar terms: instability, divergence, undefined outcome. The empire had never liked undefined outcomes. Princess Sarilith remained in the capital, but her role quietly changed. Where she had once been observed, now she was consulted. Counselors asked questions they had never needed to ask before, not because they trusted her completely, but because the old answers no longer felt sufficient. Sarilith did not rush them. She had learned that humans never force change by demand alone. They demonstrated, then waited. In one council session, a senior advisor spoke carefully. "If the marriage is not the foundation of continuity, what replaces it?" And division creates options. Requests for clarification, questions about human modeling, governance, and education. Elias answered what he could. When he could not, he said so. Humans, after all, were good at admitting they did not know. Back on Earth, Sarilith's report circulated beyond the inner court. Scholars debated it. Younger officials questioned doctrines they had memorized without reflection. Older ones resisted, but resistance lacked its former confidence. The empire had not been defeated. It had been challenged by an idea. One evening, the Supreme Regent requested a private meeting. Sarilith entered the chamber alone. The regent looked older than she remembered, or perhaps she simply saw him more clearly now. "You have created uncertainty," he said. "Yes," Sarilith replied. "For centuries, we believed uncertainty was failure. You would undo generations of order." Advisory roles opened to non-nobles. Systems allowed multiple solutions instead of single correct paths. Younger leaders were encouraged to challenge assumptions without punishment. The empire did not become human, but it began to learn. Humanity, meanwhile, noticed none of this directly. No banners were raised in their honor. No treaties declared them saviors. They continued repairing systems, arguing policies, and rebuilding what failed, which was exactly why the change held. 1 year later, Sarilith returned to human space not as an observer but as a representative. This time she arrived without escort. Elias met her at the same station where they had first spoken. "You came back," he said, smiling. "I did," she replied. "The empire is adapting." "That," she said, "is precisely what you did." A small, genuine expression that would have shocked the court if they had seen it. Before she left, she delivered a final address, not to the empire alone, but to any who would listen. "Humanity did not conquer us," she said. "They did not threaten us. They did not persuade us." Stars burned as they always had, but something subtle had changed. For the first time, a great empire had accepted that its future could not be fully planned. And humanity, without intending to, had once again done what it always did best. They did not rule the galaxy. They taught it how to survive. She said no to the wedding plans, but the alien princess amazed when she saw the human HFY stories.